All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Masuda. I'm the Director of Integrated Marketing here at Achieve, and I'm joined today by our content strategist, Hannah Lucian. And so what we're going to do is we're going to really talk about how traditional and digital tactics can really come together to help you put together and craft the most effective year-end fundraising campaign as we come upon this busy season. So just a little background on us. Achieve, we're a research and marketing agency for causes. A number of you are familiar with us through our Trusted Partner platform, which specializes in nonprofit websites and fundraising, the Millennial Impact Report, as well as our annual MCon conference. Ultimately, we exist because the world has big problems, and we are here to help you, the cause and change makers, solve them. So Hannah, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah, so I am the content strategist, as Ray said, for Achieve, and I help to craft those messages in a strategic way across multiple channels, a lot of which we'll be talking about today. Before we get started, just to let you know, we do have a lot to talk about in a short amount of time. Ryan and I could probably talk about digital tactics over 3 days, much less 30 minutes. So if you do have some questions, please go ahead and type them in through GoToWebinar. And if we have time at the end, we will try to get to them. If not, we will follow up with you afterward.
So, yeah, so ultimately, why does this even matter? Why are we even here? Hannah, fundraising, you've done a lot in the fundraising sphere. Can you kind of give us an idea of what goes on at this busy time of the year?
Yeah, so it's no secret, of course, I'm sure everyone on the phone listening from a nonprofit, that year-end time is one of the busiest times in the fundraising season. According to our friends over at Blackbaud, 71% of all charitable giving in the U.S. comes from individuals. And 30% of fundraising occurs in the month of December. So it's no joke or no secret that year-end fundraising is really important. Also, here the last stat, 28% of nonprofits that were polled raised between 26 and 50% of their total annual income from year-end. So of course, fundraising, especially at the end of the year time, is very, very important. We're also here to talk about not just about fundraising in year-end, but why using a multi-channel approach is also really important. So, Ryan?
So when we mean multi-channel, I mean, we're really focused on getting people to understand and get a consistent message across multiple channels. As we can see here from these numbers on the screen, direct mail still plays a really important role. And here at Achieve, I mean, when we're talking year-end campaigns, I mean, direct mail, as Hannah's going to talk about in a sec, is one of the most fundamentally important concepts. So we cannot lose sight of the importance of that. But it's interesting to note that, I mean, 50% of millennials, a lot of people always think our generation is very, very short on the attention span, but we really do enjoy receiving pieces in the mail. It's nice to be able to hold on to something tangible and really get a deeper understanding because there's more room to play with. You can get a more in-depth look at the story. When we look at web traffic now, over 50% of web traffic is being accessed on a mobile device. So ultimately, we're going to talk about a few things that are very important to ensure the user experience is consistent across mobile channels. And when we look at donations, you know, donors are still 50% more likely to respond to a direct mail piece when they receive multiple messages across channels that reinforce that call to action. So again, Hannah, speaking to the importance of that multi-channel approach and those touch points.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we really dig into the different types of channels and tactics that we want to talk about today, we're just going to give a quick, brief definition just so you know what we mean by each of them. So when we talk about traditional, we are talking about those offline tactics that you're used to using in fundraising. So the direct mail, a mailed response device that a donor will mail back into you with the funds, and phone calls as well, whether you're using those for advanced donor cultivation or for stewardship afterward or active donor calls during your campaign. On the digital side, that can encompass a lot of different tactics. Today, specifically, we're going to talk about email, social media, and your website.
So when you're trying to align some of these tactics, I mean, where do you kind of start? Do you kind of look at what's been there before and kind of how you can go forward?
Yeah, so the main thing to keep in mind is why traditional and digital tactics align so well is because it gives you more ways to get donors to donate. So whenever we first started, before digital tactics really emerged, you had one primary way that people could donate. They would respond to your direct mail, or of course they would phone it in. But typically, if you send a direct mail out, you'll get it back again through the mail. That tactic still exists today, of course, but whenever you add digital into the mix, you just have another way to get people to give, and it happens where they already are. So through your direct mail, if you're including your URL on there, and then other tactics like email and Facebook or other social media channels where people can directly click to your donation page from those types of sites and then give you money through there, then you're just reaching people where they already are and where it's more convenient for them.
And nowadays, I mean, really with the additional mediums and the additional channels, that means there's more noise. So ultimately, there's more noise, there's more nonprofits, there's more for-profits that are getting into the cause space that are competing for the same fundraising dollars. So ultimately, you really have to use every tool available to help you stand out. And so that's really what we're saying when we reinforce that multi-channel approach, is make sure that when you're developing your campaign, you have the ability to replicate those assets across your direct mail, across your email templates, across your Facebook. And again, it's so important that, and we can't understate enough, when you're developing these assets for the web, you have to make sure it's optimized for mobile.
Yep. So ultimately, digital gives you consistent multi-channel touch points that help drive a user from having interest in your organization, such as reading your direct mail piece or clicking on an ad that goes to your website, to ultimately taking an action for your cause, which in this case is, of course, donating.
And make it easy, because there's nothing worse than getting an email and having to take like 3 or 4 clicks to actually make that donation. You really want to make things short and concise and give that person the opportunity to make that action very quickly.
Yes, we do have short attention spans, and we tend to be lazy. So what are some other really great things that you can do through digital, right?
So ultimately, the main focus that we can't, really get away from is reaching donors where they are. I mean, a lot of people are not on Facebook, but a lot of people are. I mean, 8 in 10 Americans that we've seen are on Facebook. And so it's really important to really be able to give them those touch points and give them that messaging that reinforces what your cause is doing and the influence that you're having in your community. Testing ahead of your campaign. I mean, year end, we really recommend a 5 to 6 month approach. And so when you're really developing those assets, you need to be able to test before you really get into developing that critically important year-end collateral. So whether you're able to test messaging, imagery, Facebook and digital advertising gives you the ability to test those actions and storytelling methods.
And to see what works with what audiences, right?
Right, exactly.
Specify your message.
Yeah, you can see what works, and a lot of times, more importantly, what doesn't work. In terms of gathering your demographic data, I mean, we live in an age now where data is critically important to everything that we do. It really gives you the ability to gain a deeper understanding of the demographics of the people you're reaching, whether that's through your website and Google Analytics or through your business manager and Facebook that we'll talk a little bit more about coming up. Real-time adjustments. I mean, looking at traditional mediums like television and newspapers, once you submit that ad or that commercial, that's it. You don't get a chance to be, we probably shouldn't have said that. We could have tweaked this to be a little stronger. With Facebook and with digital methods, you have that ability to see, okay, this ad really isn't performing. Let's see if we switch out an image if that performs better. Let's see if we tweak this call to action, if that improves the ROI. So again, it really gives you the ability to make those real-time adjustments while spending less money. You're going to reach a much bigger audience for a far less spend. And I mean, I know, Hannah, one of the things that we see a lot in year-end acquisition is list buys.
Oh, yeah. So people love buying lists, and there's definitely nothing wrong with that on the mailing address and the direct mail side. But the cost of what it takes to do a list buy, a lot of times you could even do a 2 or 3 month campaign on the social side, and you're still acquiring new names like you would if you purchase a list, but you're just doing it over a longer amount of time and maybe sometimes even getting more or even more tailored data.
Definitely. So again, make sure you're tracking those actions to the goal that you set. I mean, we're going to review some metrics here down the presentation that really gives you an idea on those channels what you should be looking for and what you should be measuring.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the specific channels and how you can leverage each of them to work together for your year-end campaign. And while we've been talking a lot about digital, we don't want to or lose sight of the direct mail piece. We do still, at Achieve, view this as the campaign anchor. And of course, like we said at the beginning, there are still a lot of really good stats that are making the case for continuing to use that direct mail piece. We don't want to lose sight of it. The direct mail we view is the main place that you get to tell your organization's story through the eyes of the beneficiary that you've impacted. It's also the place that you have the most links and space to be able to tell that story. Because if you think of a piece of paper that's perhaps front and back on a direct mail versus a more concise email or a couple sentences in a social ad, while all those pieces should tie together and tie back to that beneficiary story, it really starts with your direct mail because that's when you get to tell the story in its fullest. So then after direct mail is whenever we typically go into email, is sometimes considered more of a traditional tactic even because it is so commonplace in fundraising. But what else can you do with email just besides sending them out, basically?
Well, one of the best things about email is it gives you a database to start with, and we'll talk a bit more about how that database is really going to be the foundation for your Facebook advertising campaigns. But it all depends on the health of your lists. I know a lot of people a lot of organizations are dumping all their contacts into one large newsletter list. Ultimately, the most effective strategy is going to be segmenting that out, whether it's by volunteers, whether it's by donors, whether it's by levels, whether it's by special events. You really need to kind of drill those down on a micro level so that way when you are doing these appeals, it's a much more personal message and you're keeping it clear and concise.
Right, because somebody who is a warm lead, like an event attendee or a volunteer, you would want to get them more acquainted and get them to take that first step toward donating versus somebody who's a regular monthly donor, right?
Exactly, and even if we were looking at a donor who we would call a sideline, someone who donated some year but not last year, you have to kind of work to get that relationship back versus, as you said, someone who's very active with the organization who just might need that clear direction that they need to take.
Absolutely. So whenever you are looking at email, you do get a direct online call to action there, the same with social media and other digital tactics, where instead of having someone type in your URL that they have read on a print piece, they can actually click through from your email and get directly to your donation page or the campaign page that you've optimized for the campaign. There are a lot of existing templates out there, like in Constant Contact or a MailChimp or whatever the email client platform that you're using. So really take this time to review templates that are there or templates that you've used as an organization in the past and see if they are really fit for fundraising for your year-end campaign versus, say, a newsletter or another type of organizational update. So a couple questions to consider when you are doing this is your donation button prominent? So is it really easy to see? Is it in big fat text and maybe a different color button than the rest of the email? Does it take a while for the user to have to scroll down and get to it, or can they see it pretty quickly right away? Is your subject line compelling? Are you trying different things in this time before your campaign kicks off to maybe use brackets to try to bring in urgency, to use segmentation in your subject line? Do you have images in your emails, and are they adding to or are they distracting from your message? And then when you get into the campaign time, is your message clear and concise, and does it tie through with your other tactics that you're using, like your direct mail story and your social ads?
So you would say that it's important to give people something to do when they get an email?
Typically, yes. not delete.
Yes. So when we talk about social media at Achieve, we really focus a lot of our efforts on Facebook advertising and the power of the business manager and power editor. So one of the great things about Facebook when you're advertising through them is not only are you able to serve ads on their network, but you're also able to leverage the audience network as well as Instagram. So there are a lot of different avenues and a lot of different places that your ads will be seen for a very reasonable amount of money.
Because what does audience network do? It also goes off Facebook, right?
Exactly. So it's off the Facebook network. A lot of times people will click on something, they'll go away for a second, then they'll come up on another website and, oh, there's something there. So the audience network, it really gives you a pretty substantial reach in terms of your advertising. Custom audiences from your email data. We mentioned how email is going to be the foundation, and your advertising list is only as strong as how current your email lists are. So being able to build those custom audiences in the same way that you would build those email lists, it gives you the ability to, again, hit those multiple touch points, hit the email, hit the direct mail, hit the digital with that same message for that same intentional specific audience.
Right, because it actually lets you upload your list into Facebook, right?
Exactly. And one of the great benefits about it, I mean, we talked about how list buying can be very expensive. Well, one of the great things about Facebook is that with those email lists, you're able to create lookalike audiences, which are essentially personas of people that are already engaged, depending on how you define them. So it's almost like you're creating this lookalike group of, we'll just say 2 million people, and that you can refine down and become more targeted. And these are people that match the same characteristics of people that are already engaged with your organization. So if you have, your list segmented out by side bunts or live bunts, you can create lookalikes of those different groups and then reinforce and target those groups in the same ways that you're doing across the other channels.
Much cheaper than a list buy, right?
Just a little bit.
So the last piece then is the website. So what all do we do on the website?
Everything. all of your efforts are going to your website nowadays. I mean, with all of the importance on digital, and as we mentioned, with your traditional pieces, they are going to your site. Some are going to call centers, but ultimately there always is that vanity URL so you can help measure your campaigns. So you really want to make sure that you're tracking everything. If you're not tracking everything, you're not learning anything. You're just kind of guessing. And we really recommend the approach, like if you can't track it, you shouldn't do it. So when you're starting, you need to kind of start from square one, ensure that your Google Analytics UA tracking is in place, and really go ahead and identify those different goal conversions, whether that's donations, email signups, event registrations. And optimizing your campaign pages. That is very, very important because depending on your audience and goals, you're going to be sending people to different pages. I mean, someone who has never been involved with your organization, you're not just going to send them right to the donation page. It's, we got to take things slow. This is not, an aggressive first date. We got to really kind of be intentional about this and educate them. So in terms of those goals, you really just want to set those up and ensure that you're able to track every action that is important to not only your organization, but your board of directors. And in terms of pop-ups, so Hannah, a lot of people think that pop-ups can be annoying.
I'm included.
But they work.
They do work, yes, because they are so disruptive, right?
Exactly. And it also, one of the great things about pop-ups is you're giving someone something to do, and it's simple and concise. So again, we can't underemphasize that enough. And thanking people is kind of important.
I guess, yeah. No, people love to be thanked, of course. So you know that your stewardship campaigns after a fundraising campaign is over is very important. But use your website to help you out. So whenever someone clicks the donate button after they put in their payment information, have some kind of success message there so they know it went through. And then if you have, depending on your platform, kick off an automated thank you email that has some of the information, a confirmation of their donation again, and just a quick thank you. And then don't stop there. Week after the campaign ends, maybe 1st of January, you also want to continue thanking them and showing their dollars at work.
It's always better to overthank than underthank.
It's so true.
So ROI, that's kind of important, especially for marketing people that have to show that what we're doing is actually helping.
Yes, got to make the case that it's working.
So when you're looking at the channels and the touch points that it takes a donor to convert, it's really important to understand, what are those paths that they're taking? I mean, some people might just click on an ad and go right to donate. Great job. That's awesome. Some people are going to need to do a little bit more background research. So that's where the assisted conversions and Google Analytics really comes into hand. And when we're looking at e-commerce, I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to set those up kind of going forward, but it's just very important to understand the metrics that you should be looking at. I know a lot of times with Facebook, we hear, a lot of our clients are, like reach, awareness, like our engagement, like that's great. And we're just like, yeah, so well, what is it doing for you on a conversion side? And
right.
Ultimately,
they're great, but they don't really tell you anything.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I have this really high number of people that might have seen this ad, but how many people actually did what I wanted? Like, well, I don't know. And so ultimately, it's setting up those custom conversions and really ensuring that all of your specific event donation pixels and event confirmation ones are set up so that way you're able to track those amounts and really be able to show, you see, boss, what we're doing actually has influences and has an impact on our goals.
Another thing to keep in mind when you are measuring ROI is it's not really a one-to-one measurement between digital and traditional tactics. Whenever you're measuring how your direct mail performs, if people either mail back in their response device, of course you're going to have really straightforward metrics as far as the number of donors, the amount of donations, average gift size, and pieces like that. You might have some of those on the email or the social side, depending on if you have all of these goals in the e-commerce section set up on your website. But you also don't forget the other things that you're getting at the same time. On Facebook, you know, your ads might not be directly converting to donations, but how much data are you gathering? You're gathering really detailed data that's going to give you a better understanding of your audience who might become potential donors in the future. So it really is, again, that online list buy that is still setting you up for future campaigns.
So, I'm interested. What do I do? Help me.
First of all, keep in mind, start small. So I know that we're talking about a lot of different things right now, and if this is the first year that you are starting off your individual fundraising, or if you have kept it primarily to direct mail or direct mail and email, you're interested in going into the social space but don't really know how, just start small. Start by testing small things. Keep your budget small to start. But just try adding new tactics as you're going, and use the time now, between now and mid-November, to try new things and see what sticks and what you feel that you have the resources to do.
And set a goal. I mean, even if you have data to set one, like that's awesome. You have a baseline for future campaigns. And if you don't, you know, like Hannah said, use this as a test campaign. Start throwing 20, and this is different. I want to make it very clear. This is different than just boosting a post. You know, boosting a post to people that like your page and people or friends that are people that like your page. I mean, that is the very basic bare minimum of what you can do. We're not talking about that. We're talking about creating and targeting specific intentional audiences, setting parameters, and then developing those ads and copy in Business Manager, which is separate from boosting posts. So again, you can do this for as little as $20 a week, and you start to learn more and see what happens. And ultimately, hey, you know what? I did my first ad. I got 0 donations, but I had 75 people click on it. Okay, that's great, because that's 75 people that went to your site, that's 75 people who were captured by your Facebook pixel data, that's 75 users that you can add into a retargeted list later on.
Absolutely. Do keep in mind, don't get discouraged. Anytime you start a new marketing or fundraising program or tactic, it's going to take about 2 to 3 years before you see any kind of substantial ROI. So again, start small. When you're making these tweaks over time, it'll pay off in the future. It just might not be immediately. And right now might not be the best time for you to try new things if you don't have the resources for it. You know, maybe you already have your plan in place for this year at year end, but try new things for your spring campaign or your summer campaign.
And setting a goal isn't good if you keep it to yourself. You have to communicate that goal. And a lot of times, you know, we do see a lot of moving appeals, but the action isn't really clear. So again, communicate that goal, give people something to do.
Absolutely. So now, looking at tangibly, what do you do if people want to start getting set up with Facebook ads?
So if you don't already have a Business Manager account and you're not tracking through your Facebook pixel data, you want to go ahead and set that up immediately. And setting up your Business Manager, it's going to give you the ability to manage those fan pages where you might be boosting posts already. But then it's also going to give you those business level insights and reporting, that demographic breakdown, the ability to create those retargeted and custom audiences. And go ahead and generate that base code pixel and the event specific codes, and you need to get those installed on your website yesterday.
And event specific codes are?
So that would be like if you have a payment form on a donation page. Some good things that we like to track is, obviously we like to track the people who made the donation. That's great. That person converted. We can show that. But a lot of times we also like to track who might have added some information to that payment form but didn't actually take the action of donating, because that's very interesting to us. Is like, okay, this person was very engaged. They were about to take that step, but they didn't for some reason. So let's try to develop messaging specifically for that audience that really kind of helps them to say, hey, you know, we need your help to just get across this portion of our goal. Again, uploading those segmented email lists to create those custom audiences, whether that's donors, volunteers, events, that's going to be invaluable for you in your advertising. Those lookalikes based on those same ones, you can't go wrong with free list buys. Really can't. Develop that messaging and creative for each audience and get those ads deployed. Again, for as little as $20 a week, you can learn a lot. And ultimately, when you're pitching to your boss or your board of directors, hey, we're building this audience for a future campaign. We're setting that baseline. These people, everyone who comes to the site is a potential donor, is a potential ambassador that we can target down the road.
All right, so Facebook's all good, all set up. Now what about the website?
So your website, I mean, if it's not responsive, you need to work on that or get that in the budget for 2018. Because one of the things that is a challenge is when someone is landing on a page that isn't, I mean, we refer to it a lot of times as responsive, mobile friendly. Responsive means different things to different people, but your website has to be easily viewable across phones, tablets, all those devices. There's nothing worse than landing on a page, zooming in, zooming out, playing around.
Especially if you're trying to donate.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to donate. That's not a fun user experience for anyone.
And don't forget, at the beginning of the webinar, whenever we said a couple of statistics, like 51% of people are donating through mobile sites, and 84% of nonprofits don't have landing pages optimized for mobile. So really important reasons that you want to make sure that you build that into your organization's future if it's not already.
Set up your Google Analytics so that way you can analyze everything that's going on. Your Google Analytics goals, we touched on that a little bit earlier. Again, this allows you to see the unique, donation confirmations, email signups, gets a really good idea of what's going on. E-commerce tracking, this is something that a lot of organizations forget about, and it's one of the most valuable tools that Google provides. This really gives you the ability to see the unique amount of donations and understand the path that the users are taking. And it gives you just a really good sense of how long it took them to complete that, so that way if your site's having load problems, it's a really good idea and a really good tool to understand a lot of those behaviors. And again, analyzing the website, see where your traffic's coming from, see what your popular pages are, and ultimately make sure you're tracking and understanding where all of those mediums are coming from.
So now, when do you do all this? And the short answer is a lot of it now, or as soon as possible.
Yesterday.
Exactly. But now through probably mid-November is really when you do want to get all of those technological pieces in place, the Facebook and website pieces, as well as start looking and cleaning up and segmenting your email database. And then start testing things. So whatever messages you're sending out between now and whenever your year-end campaign will actually launch, use it as a testing time to see what people are responding to and then what tweaks you can make in the interim. And of course, you want to also be working on creation of your direct mail, collecting your beneficiary stories, creating those emails and social assets that you'll be using during campaign deployment. November to December, of course, is whenever your campaign will be going live. So launching all tactics, we typically suggest kicking off your social ads about 2 weeks before your direct mail is expected to drop in mailboxes. That way it does give you just a little extra time to do any testing or last-minute adjustments that are needed. But it also helps get an initial awareness, a period of awareness, out before your direct mail is going to hit people's mailboxes. Then, of course, have your emails going out through the month of December, and all the while you can still, with those digital tactics, do any ongoing tracking and adjustments as needed. Because when it comes to digital, set it and forget it is not a strategy.
No, and you need to try, I mean, we mentioned tracking all of those campaigns. That is something that you can do by setting up, custom UTM links, and everything that we do, I mean, we're setting them up. Organic, advertising, email, I mean, no matter what campaign it is, it's going to have a unique UTM tracking link, so that is something, so you're not, combining. You can isolate things and really understand what is working.
Absolutely. And then after your campaign's over, January 1 comes around, maybe you take a day off for the holiday, and then it's time to get into the stewardship piece of it. So, we talked earlier about using digital to thank people, either on your website and then kick off an automated email. We also suggest another email sent probably the first week of January, again, just reiterating how grateful you are for donations. But then don't stop there. Follow it up, going back to traditional means, and mail out a letter. Again, we all love getting mail, especially whenever it's calling attention to what we've done and how we're helping. And then continue on throughout the year with your stewardship strategy, showing the donors' dollars at work throughout the year anytime that you add a new program or make a new purchase for your organization or help somebody new. Those are all opportunities to show the donor how grateful you are that you are able to do that because of their support. And of course, we also need to analyze.
What worked? What didn't? What did we learn from this? And hey, we might have spent $500 in advertising, but maybe we brought in, only $350 in donations. But guess what? We acquired 15 new donors, and the value of that lifetime donor acquisition. I mean, that's what everyone's about, right? Is acquiring new donors.
Absolutely. So we are pretty much out of time right now, so we will end on this. As far as tools that you can use, some of the things we've talked about today, from the UTM campaign builder links for tracking specific websites, different things like that. There are a lot of free resources online, and we'll send out a couple in our follow-up email early next week. What you also don't want to miss out on is our year-end planning guide. So we have created an in-depth, step-by-step, or month-by-month planning guide for your year-end or any time of your fundraising campaign, with some things that you should do each month and keep in mind as you're going through leading up to campaign deployment. So that you can download for free from our website on the URL that's on the screen. And then secondly, we have another webinar series that's getting ready to kick off next month. Rye, tell us about that one.
Yeah, so our Achieves president and nonprofit and fundraising expert, Derek Feldman, is going to be conducting a 3-part year-end fundraising appeals webinar series. So we'll really be focusing on, you know, the messaging, the creative, as well as the multi-channel approach. So Derek, I mean, he has decades of experience in the fundraising realm, and his research and data that he's gotten from, gosh, so much work in the field is going to be really invaluable to a lot of you guys who are kind of in the weeds with your year-end campaign. So we will certainly be sending out information about that series, as well as how you and your organization can sign up, along with the recording of this, because I know we've gotten a couple of questions on, will this information be available? Absolutely. We will certainly make this available to you probably early next week. We want to let you enjoy the Labor Day week, holiday weekend.
And us too. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will send a follow-up next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.